Lord. Awesome. So what I want to do, I'll mute everybody real quick. I just want to go over a couple things just so we can kind of have clarity on what's going on, and then we'll roll right into the topic. There's just a couple reminders at the top of this call/webinar that we want to roll through. So we went through that. All right. So one of the things you're going to hear, at least I hope that we get out of this mastermind, is kind of being comfortable being uncomfortable. So I thought this quote was appropriate. The quote reads, "Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you know, that's how you break through a plateau and reach that next level." So we're going to talk about that a lot in coaching for 2019, but specifically getting comfortable being uncomfortable is a conversation we definitely have when we're talking about door knocking. I thought that was a pretty cool quote. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. That's how you break the plateau and reach that next level. Just like there's 3 reminders I want you guys to be aware of. Tomorrow, the 18th, is that Buffini bold predictions. Basically, you should have RSVP'd. If you haven't, make sure you let me know because I think they've already closed out that RSVP. I think there's 35 people in attendance. It's in the training room. We're going to have lunch provided. House on a Rock Home Inspections is going to give us some lunch. 12:30 is right after Kathy's Broker Roundtable. So if you're going to Broker Roundtable, we're going to slide right in at 12:30 and get started. Brian Buffini is a coach and a real estate agent in our profession, and he has about an hour long predictions on some of the things we should be doing in our businesses. So we'll talk about that afterwards. So we'll watch the video together and hang out and have lunch together, and then we're going to mastermind for about 15-20 minutes. We'll get out about 2:15. Again, if you haven't RSVP'd and want to come, just let me know because we've ordered food already, and I want to make sure there's enough food for you. Make a note that next week is a mastermind call, but it's moved to the 25th, which is a Friday, because I will be at a summit that we're doing. So it's on January 25th, and the time is different. It's normally our masterminds are at 1. It's at 11. It's 11 to 12. We are going to be interviewing Michelle Hazlett, talking about networking. We're also going to be actually interviewing Denise Roman, my operations manager. Her husband, actually, he is pretty aggressive with networking and building networking groups. He actually does 401ks for nonprofits. So he's going to give a different perspective, non-real estate perspective on the power of networking with vendors and businesses. So I want you guys to make sure you attend that next on the 25th. And then that 5th week of the January, there's no coaching. So just know that. Oh. And then another thing to make a note of is this is already on the schedule, February 7th, which is our group coaching. We're going to be working on handling objections. We have what we call the 4 quadrants of pain and pleasure. Those have been in coaching for a while. Know that this comes from a class called Bold. I would like as many people to come. Definitely new agents are expected to attend, but I think we need to brush up on some of our scripting about handling objections. Sellers and buyers are coming up with some very creative ways to not sign a contract and negotiate things. I want to make sure on February 7th you guys attend. That's at a normal time of 1 to 7. So that's the quick reminders on that. Also, canva.com. You guys have mentioned that before. You guys are doing great with that. I love that I see you guys using that tool. If you were at the Tech Roadshow, which was last week, you're going to be seeing that on KW Command, they're going to start using a product. It just totally went out of my head. Which is very similar to Canva when you're creating flyers and things like that. So what I'd like for us to do is all start using Canva, so when KW Command comes out, that learning curve is going to be a little bit easier to kind of go through. It's called Sketchhouse, I believe. So Sketchhouse in KW Command has got a very similar adaptation to Canva. So I'd like for you guys to look at that as a way for creating flyers, social media posts, and things like that. If you need a login and the password for Canva, it is actually on your own spreadsheet under coaching tools. There's a tab in your coaching spreadsheet that says coaching tools, and it has the Canva password and the username, so make sure you kind of know that. Kelly, everybody needs to make sure they've adopted that and actually downloaded that. We talked about that. The thing is, if you don't have that app, as we start to use KW Command in the next 30 days, it'll be much more challenging. So I always my analogy is it's like the remote control to the TV. Kelly is going to talk to your command dashboard, and you need to make sure you actually have that downloaded and all that good stuff. Power hours, everybody knows. That's on Monday through Friday in the Movement Lounge. You guys have done a great job as far as team captains have been showing up to lead Power Hour. Where I see some opportunity is we need to show up at a higher level. I do know that you guys are setting some appointments. I see that. And yet Power Hour is really more of a one-on-one interaction with either the person leading Power Hour, and I want you guys to make sure you're getting a lot out of Power Hour. I saw people setting up searches for people. I saw people do a lot of different things to get their phone calls set up so they can be productive when they're lead generating. So I've also checked in with your accountability team captains. 2 weeks in, you guys are doing a great job. There's still a few of you that need to be plugged in. If you have not connected with your accountability teams yet, I trust that you'll do that by tomorrow. Otherwise, we'll kind of have a little private conversation about if you want to be on a team or not. This is supposed to help you guys kind of stay engaged and obviously help support your business. So make sure you're kind of reaching out to your team captains. And that's pretty much up on the reminders. Now we're going to go into the topic. So I'm going to open it up a little bit so Kim can talk, but I want to cover a few things first before I kind of interact with her with some questions, which is the basic premise of why Keller Williams believes door knocking is successful. If you can't see the screen, we believe in what we call the lead generation model. And so basically the lead generation model in the MRA book talks about have not met. And if you're looking at that, basically what it's saying is that if you don't know these people, you should be communicating with them once a month. So when you're door knocking, so when you meet them for the very first time, the success is not necessarily the door knocking the first time. It's that follow-up consistently, which we're going to talk about. But it's also considered what they call a target group have not met. So if you're looking at building a stronger database, you have to have people like your sphere, some vendors, but you're also going to have to work in a target group have not met. And that is definitely a door knocking situation. So I want you to kind of be aware of that. So these are some overall benefits. I might mute you because Kim's got a little sidetracked. Is some of the benefits of door knocking. My computer's been a little weird here. Okay, let me mute you just real quick, Kim. Some of the benefits of door knocking that we've talked about in past workshops is the fact that you don't really have to spend a lot of money on it. In fact, when we talk to Kim, we'll talk about how much money she spends and what she uses. You don't really need anything to door knock. In fact, I'll tell you a quick story. We had someone an agent door knock Kim and I where we live, our house. All he had was business cards. So he didn't have anything really elaborate when he was door knocking. You can build some really good connections. The reason why is because we know that body language is important. We know tonality is important. We also know that, I don't know if you've ever heard somebody on the phone and they're kind of like a little chihuahua. They're just a little feisty on the phone. And then when you actually talk to them or see them face to face, they're much more calm in demeanor. So actually door knocking has less rejection. It actually is completely a different vibe than cold calling. So if I hear somebody, an agent, that says, hey, I'm not really excited about cold calling, door knocking would be a great option because it's still connecting with people that you may not know, but they're less likely to kind of give you a cold shoulder. It also allows you more opportunity for your database. So I just want you to kind of think about that. If you've never door knocked before, keep an open mind as we go through. The biggest thing I want you to think about, regardless of the scripting and the conversations you have at door knocking, it's the with them. It's what's it in it for me. So when you knock on the door, you need to make sure that it's about that person, asking them questions like, hey, how long have you lived in the neighborhood, different things like that, because otherwise you unfortunately kind of come off as that vacuum or car salesman. So make sure when you're door knocking, it is about them. You're just engaging with them, and not just being a robot asking them for the business. The other thing I want to talk about is reasons to door knock. So I often see people door knocking like I have a buyer. If you have literally a buyer right now and you do not have a house to sell them because there's no inventory, you can knock on doors and say I have a buyer and he's in the 250 to 350 range, open houses, farming, for sale by owners, expireds, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of opportunity for door knocking, and we just kind of need to work through that. You'll see on the screen if you're watching through video, we have a lot of resources to make you look good from a flyer standpoint. So if you don't want to just have a business card in your hand and you feel like you need some type of marketing material, we have them on Michael Lewis Marketing Suite, and it's actually a button under flyers that says prospecting. And you'll see on the screen, if you see this, there's 4 different flyer options. Really easy to customize and be professional. I honestly don't think you need to print them in color. I don't think you need to spend the money on it, but it will show that you have some marketing in your toolbox. When you're knocking on the door, you can hand them that. And then I wanted you to be aware, before we get into discussion with Kim, that we have door knocking scripts on Coaching with Drew. So if you go to the coachingwithdrew.com website, you log into scripts, there's actually 6 different scripts that I already have at your disposal for door knocking, and they're broken down by topic. So example, I have a buyer, I have a script for that. Your neighborhood expert, I have a script for that. There's scripts, all kinds of scripts already at your disposal. That it's literally in the scripts folder in coachingwithdrew.com, and it literally is labeled door knocking scripts, so it can't be any easier. All right, so that's kind of the run of that. I want to talk to Kim now and kind of get a pulse of what she's got to say about this topic. So I'm going to open it up. Kim, can you hear me? You good?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. So some of you guys may know or may not know Kim, but we want to kind of kick it off just with a little bit of background for everybody. How long have you been a real estate agent? Can you give us a background of who you are and things like that with real estate as far as experience?
I had my license in 2007, but I was doing the back admin things. I was sitting in open houses, but it was pretty much model homes. It wasn't like actually doing, I wasn't selling. So I would just sit in model homes. I would show people houses. But of course, when they got to the contract part and negotiation, that was the part where you would step in and handle that from there. So I've never really sold, actually gotten buyers and done that until recently when I got my license renewed, and I've been doing that for about a year and a half. So now I've been actively selling.
Like a year and a half. Okay, cool.
Right, yeah.
And so you are on a team. You're a buyer's agent for Tracy, right?
Yes. So I'm on the Curzon team, and I am her buyer agent, which is working very well for us, because she's had some other agents that were buyer agents before, but they just weren't the right fit. So she needs a experienced agent, and so her and I work very well together.
Good. So we always talk about, I know in coaching and in real estate, we talk about pillars of lead generation. We talk about pillars or the 3-legged stool, is I think the Brian Buffini approach. What are your 3 pillars of lead generation? What do you focus on to get your leads? And then why did you pick those?
So my 3 pillars are networking, I do my sphere, and then I also do open houses. So as part of the networking, once I joined Tracy's team, her whole team model is referral. So she's very much into Buffini. She has a Buffini coach, and her whole business last year was pretty much 95% referral. So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the reasons why it enticed me to her team, because that's eventually how I would like to get my business.
Okay.
So she doesn't do the cold calling. She doesn't do all of that because she doesn't need to, because she's been in the business 15 years and she's built such a huge referral. That being said, she is a large advocate for BNI, which is a networking group.
Okay.
So 33% of her business that she gets comes from her BNI group, which, with that being said, she then, when I joined her team, she wanted me to start another BNI group. So I'm in the process of doing that and starting up. So really, it's an easy process to start one. It takes time, but I got like-minded individuals that I've worked with and recommended in the past, and now we meet on a regular basis, and we're just constantly inviting other people to try and grow our group. And then once we get to a certain number, then we can go to the BNI and charter our group and grow. So it's interesting to go out, and then that also too helps me with vendors, because then I work with them and I'm offering them value to then invite them to my BNI group. So I'm not just calling them, I'm calling them and adding value to their business.
So with your team working by referral, and you're also pretty robust, kind of getting into the networking phase of things, how do you incorporate door knocking? Because that seems like, why would you need to door knock if you got those other lead sources? 33% of networking is your business. Why did you to make that decision? Because obviously the topic is door knocking today. You do that. Why did you see that you needed to add that component in there? Like, how do you incorporate it in based on which your team focuses on anyway?
So one of my pillars is open houses, and I'm very particular on the open house that I do. And the reason I do that is because I wanted to incorporate door knocking in there.
Oh, okay.
That's just another way I wanted to lead gen for my team. So I knew that I was more comfortable face to face. So that's why I wanted to do open houses, and that's why I wanted to incorporate door knocking, because I'm more comfortable with that face to face connection than I am with cold calling over the phone.
Gotcha. All right. So it kind of connects with a little bit of networking because it's building relationships, and you felt like door knocking kind of connects that to you. Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of walk me through how you prepare for door knocking. Is it just a spontaneous, hey, I'm going to knock on this door, or is there any thought process into it? Like, what's your strategy to get yourself kind of psyched up and ready for it?
So when I pick the open house that I'm going to do, I make sure that the neighborhood is consistently moving. It's a popular neighborhood that I see houses on the market moving and buying and selling. I don't want to do an open house at a neighborhood that is kind of stagnant. So I'm very particular on what neighborhood I pick. So then I know that I'm going to have people coming to my open house, because that's ultimately the point. So then I get the flyers together and I prepare on Monday what exactly I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it. And I time block based on my circle prospecting. And then I say, okay, this is the day I'm going to door knock. And I typically door knock the day I'm going to put up signs.
Okay.
So depending on, and I typically will always do that either Friday afternoon, because typically people will get off work on Friday afternoons, or
what
Saturday
time?
morning.
Like, what are you thinking time-wise, if you can nail that? What's your preferred time?
I always do it around 3:30, because I tried to do it later than that, but it was getting dark, so that was not ideal. And my husband recommended I don't go knock on strangers' doors in the middle at night.
Correct.
Yeah, so I had to adjust that. But then probably too, when the time changes, I will push that. So then I push that to, because then I know more people will be home. And then depending on the neighborhood, what they've got going on, and I might even do it on a Saturday morning, which is even better because everyone's usually home.
Okay. And then, so you're getting ready to knock on doors. Like, what type of materials do you use? Do you use anything to door knock with, or do you not? I mentioned that story about us being at home and this agent knocks on the door, just hands us a business card. What's your strategy of what marketing materials you bring, or do you not bring marketing materials? And give us a rundown of like what you have in your hand when you're knocking on the door.
So I always have the flyer for the open house that I'm doing. Okay. And I typically just take that and I write on the top of it, open house. And I take this nice little flyer and I write on the top of it, open house, 1:30 to 4. And then I photocopy that black and white. And then I have my business cards. And then I have a fear of large dogs. So I saw it on one of the Facebook groups, dog biscuits. So I now bring like a little basket with me, and it has little dog biscuits in there with my business card. So I found
Wow, that's
that when I,
cool.
yeah, so then I found when I would go to the house, so many people were like pulling back the dog or distracted by the dog. And I would have that fear. I get that anxiety when the dogs are barking. So I literally give the dog biscuit. The owner's like, oh, wow. And then the dog's eating the dog biscuit while I'm sitting there talking to the person. So
I
those
like
are the things
that.
that I would
That's a
do.
cool idea. So you just kind of have
Yeah.
that. So you have your marketing flyer. Let me make sure you have a marketing flyer. Why do you handwrite it? Do you think that that's just a more personal touch? Do you not want to type? Why? Is there a method to it, or is that just by chance? By why you writing it on 130 to 4 there?
I just write it on there in a big marker and then just photocopy it just because it's easy. I don't want to sit there and type it so it blends in with everything. I want it to kind of stick out. So that's
Gotcha.
why it's in my handwriting on top. And I feel like it almost looks a little bit more personal. Like,
Okay.
hey, this is what I'm doing. And I just don't want it to blend into the flyer so they accidentally.
So what's the 130 to 4 thing? Like, why do you write 130 to 4? Because most people do 2 to 4, right? I mean, that's what you typically do your open
Right.
house. So what's the 130 all
But
about?
the 130 is just inviting them to the neighborhood open house, which is just reiterating the fact that when I circle prospect, that's what I'm inviting them. So I'm inviting them from 1:30 to 2 for a neighborhood open house, for them to come and check out their neighbor's house, give me feedback,
So,
and that's
so
typically
like
why I do
how?
it
So
that
the
way.
script. Can you walk me through? Like, if you knock on my door, what do you say? You knock on the door. What do you physically do, and what do you physically say? Like, give me a little bit of rundown on that, so we can visualize kind of how it's going to go down. Can you give me the
So I
rundown
knock
on
on
that? Okay.
Yeah, I knock on the door. I try not to ring the doorbell. I knock on the door if I don't hear anybody moving. Oh, and I guess another part is I only do about 20 houses. So I have
Oh
the
wow.
20
Okay.
flyers, and I only go to a house where I see cars in the driveway. So I don't really go to a house if there's nobody there because there's no point in that. So if I go to the house, I'll knock on the door because I see a car is there, and then I will, if they don't answer it, then I'll leave something on their door. If they do answer it, then they come to the door. Hopefully they don't have a dog, but I knock on the door, step back a little bit so it's not as I'm not in their face.
So you
And then
step
I
back
say,
after
hey,
you knock on the door. So that's a.
right.
Why do you do that? Like, do you think that's important? Is that just instinctual, or is that why do you do that?
Because I don't want to be in their face when they open the door, like, hey, here I am trying to sell you something. I don't want to do that. So I feel like it's off-putting if I just get in their face. So I just step, especially too, because screen doors kind of push out. I don't want to be in the way. I don't want it to be awkward.
Okay.
So they'll sometimes the screen door will push out, and then they won't step out all the way. They'll just some people will open up the door all the way, and then so I just immediately hand them the flyer, and I say, hey, sometimes especially if it's just listed, I'll say, hey, we just listed this house up the street. We're having an open house on Sunday. I'm inviting all the neighbors, and I'd really like you to come by. It's open from 1:30 to 4, but the neighbors, I'd like to come by between 1:30 and 2. If you can come by during that time, that'd be great. I'd love your feedback on the house, kind of what you think for pricing. And I said, everybody loves to see what everybody's houses look like. Is that something you're able to do? Are you here? And then they'll say yes or no. And then as I'm talking to them, if I see like it's going okay, then I'll say, what made you move into the neighborhood? What enticed you to live here? So I can share that with other people, which I get really good feedback from that. And then I use that when I do my open house. So then because some people, if I'm door knocking on a Friday and I didn't know there was like a farmer's market up the street, I didn't know that. So this neighbor told me. So I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. And they say, yeah, there's this local farmer's market, and they tell you all this stuff, and that's why. And then also I get to know kind of the perception. They'll tell me, oh, I'm renting, so then I'll see a lot of that as well, and I especially know to follow up.
Do
So
you
then
get
I know, okay, this
objections?
might
Do you
be.
get jerks? Do you get people that are like yelling at you and screaming at you, and they're just because you make phone calls, and some people are kind of jerks on the phone. Do you feel that they do the same thing with you when I mean, obviously you're a stranger knocking on their door. So do you feel like they give you some objections? Are they rude to you? Can you give me like rainbows and sunshine? It's great, but do you feel like there's anybody that is? Do you feel like that's a part of something that we need to be aware of as far as how they react to people that knock on the door? What's your
No,
experience?
I haven't really gotten a negative thing because I think a lot of people, if they don't they're not in the mood to talk to somebody, they just won't answer the door. So
good point.
I don't get that negativeness from them because they won't answer if they don't want to talk to me. They probably think I'm selling something, so they just won't answer the door. But if they're willing to come to the door, then they kind of want to see what I'm doing. So I've never gotten negative like I do when I just cold call.
Gotcha.
So that's why I realized, okay, this door knocking thing is not as scary as I built up in my head.
So you go through the script and you talk to them and they give you some feedback about the neighborhood, you give the dog a treat, which is pretty cool. Like, do you ask them for their contact information, like, or do you just say thank you very much and move on? Like, how do you get any of their stuff, so you can work on a future relationship? How do you do that?
Well, I asked them if they know anybody, if any of their neighbors are thinking about selling. And then I asked them if they know anybody that might be wanting to buy or sell a house. And then we kind of, I make sure I give them my business card. And then if it seems they might be interested, I'll say, oh, do you mind if I have, because this one lady was like, oh, my daughter's looking at buying a house.
Well,
so I can touch base with her.
You're breaking up.
Hey, Drew, can I ask
Your
a
phone's
question?
breaking up. Yeah, sure.
Kim, hi, Selma. So for the ones who don't answer the door, do you leave a flyer there?
Yes, I leave my business card. And if that,
Your phone's breaking up, Kim. We can't really hear every other word.
Can you hear me now?
Sorta, but not really that great. I can hear you, I guess. We'll give it a go. It's not working. Kimberly, your cell phone service not working. We can't hear you. All right. Well, I don't really know what we can do unless we can get Kim's cell phone service back up and running here.
Can you hear me? Is it getting any better? Hello?
I can hear you barely, but I can hear you.
I'm near the hospital, so now I'm driving away. Maybe it has something to do with that. Oh, is it getting better?
Yeah, it seems to be getting better, yeah. Why don't maybe, could you possibly park?
Okay, so what I leave behind, I have one of those clear bags, and in it, I leave the flyer, and if I hear dogs, I leave my little dog treat bag with them. That's what I leave if they're not home, or they don't want to answer me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
All right. Wherever you are, that works. Just hold your leg up or do something.
Got it.
All right, so we talked about contact information. We talked about, did you leave stuff behind? You said yes. How many people, so you say you door knock 20 people every time you do an open house. Like, what's your average conversation rate? You talk to 5 people, talk to 20 people. Like, what's your average if you're doing 20 flyers or 20 doors? How much time does that take? How many people do you talk to? Give me a little bit of an insight on that.
If I do 20, I probably talk to about 15 or so. And again, it's based on the neighborhood and it is. And then and two, because I'm skipping houses and I'm only going to houses that I see cars.
Okay.
So, and then two, it probably takes me, if I start at 3:30, I'm probably done in less than an hour. So I'm just like, I'm almost like speed racing through the neighborhood.
So 15 people in 45 to 50 minutes. That's a lot. Yeah, that's good.
I just like buzz through it. So because it's still kind of intimidating for me. So I just know I have to do it and buzz through it. And
well, I mean, I just did math. That's 3 to 4 minutes a person. I mean, I think that's a pretty reasonable. I mean, after that, you're sticking around, hanging around their front porch for a while, Yeah.
So, and you don't want to be awkward.
Yeah. So now you finished your door knocking for the day. What do you do for follow-up? So you talk to those 15 people. How do you track who you spoke to? How do you do your follow-up? Like, what's the method to that after those 15 connections?
I will, if I talk to somebody as I'm leaving, I take a picture of their mailbox if it has the house number on it, or I'll take a picture of it's just quickly with the house number, so I know what house it was.
Okay.
And then I follow up with a note, and I kind of stalk them a little bit. I look up their tax records and just find out their name, and then I have the address, and then I just send them a quick, thank you for talking to me the other day. Here's my business card again. Let me know if you have anybody that you can think of since we last spoke that might be wanting to buy or sell.
So you take a photo of the mailbox or something so you can keep track of the number. You know what street you're on. You tax record it, so you write the note, and you get those out. How quickly do you get those notes out?
Usually on Monday. So the following Monday, I'll do all that.
Okay. And then what do you do with them in the future after you wrote that first note? What's your plan to stay in communication? Because what I talked about at the beginning of the call was this is a have not met. You need to communicate with them once a month at some capacity. I know this is something fairly new, but is there a strategy that you're thinking about long term to stay in connection with these type of people?
I add them to my database and I make them like a C. So they'll get our mailers. Since I don't have their email address or anything like that, they'll get our monthly mailers that we send out. That's how I kind of contact them and keep them aware of what's going on.
All right, let's kind of transition to a kind of similar to door knocking, but I want to talk about, you mentioned before that you had a fear of dogs, kind of have a fear of door knocking. Like, how did you overcome that? Because it's easy. Especially in your position, you could say, hey, I've got networking, I have my sphere, I have this team that works by referral. I mean, you don't have to door knock. You don't have to do that. How did you take your fear and say, the heck with this, I'm going to do it anyway? Walk us through that, because I think people that are listening, they just have sometimes have that limiting belief or fear behind door knocking. Walk us through how your brain kind of operated in that situation?
Well, I was terrified of doing it. And you and I, the first time we did it together. So yeah. I would suggest that you go with somebody that has done it before. And you go, and I went with you, and you kind of pushed me because you obviously had done it in the past. And so when we went, you knocked on the first house, and I just kind of watched, and I was like, oh wow, that's not as scary. Like, he didn't get shot. Like, it's okay. Like, they didn't yell at him. They didn't. It's not like it was when I'm on the phone. This is way easier. And then what we did was you and I split the street, and you did one side and I did the other. And it was kind of like almost like a race to see who all we had talked to and to get rid of our flyers that we had in our hands. So it then took me out of okay, I'm scared, and it kicked up my competitiveness that I wanted to talk to more people than you did. So yeah. I kind of used that and got out of my fear. And I was
Which I think I won, by the way. I think I won, but I'm just saying.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But so then I took another agent who she was fearful, and Diane was like, oh, I'd like to start door knocking. And that's exactly what I did with her. And then she took one side of the street and I took the next. And then we literally divided up this neighborhood and door knocked and touched base afterwards. And she was like, well, that's not as scary as I thought. I'm like, no, it's not. It's really.
Is Diane on the call? Are you on here? I don't know if you're on here or not. I don't know if Diane's on the call. It'd be interesting perspective of that. I do think, I think you're right. I think you just have that natural fear, but you almost have to rip that Band-Aid off and then go, wow, it's not as bad as I thought. So would that be your advice? Like, if you've never door knocked before, is that the advice you'd give, is go with somebody? Or what do you think, any tips or tricks that you think that would be important for them to know?
Yeah, like I would totally take someone the first time. And then some of the mortgage people that I've even talked to had said that they would go with me. So you could even take them with you because they're seeing an added benefit in doing that with you. Sometimes too, if I have a lender that's helping me with the flyer, then I'll invite them to come with me if they're available. So that way it's not you're both doing it, you're getting through, and then they have the added benefit because they're on the flyer and you are. So you're kind of doing double the time with doing it with someone else. And then it's less scary the first time you've done it. So you'll get over that fear and it'll be more comfortable.
Yeah. So have you gotten any leads from it so far? Have you gotten anything where you can measure that the time that you've done this, and the efforts you've gone through, the fears you've overcome have paid off and given you some nurtures or some leads that you can look at in the future? Have you gotten any results so far?
It's a lot of nurturing. I've gotten probably like 3 or 4 that I'm just nurturing. So it's like a family member that they had. So I'm just kind of touching base with them. And so they know people, but they don't exactly know the timeline that they want to do it. So it's a nurturing thing. So they see it, and then I will touch base too with them again once the house goes under contract, or if anything changes with that house in their neighborhood, then I'll follow up with them as well. So they kind of understand that I'm going to let them know what's going on with the neighborhood.
Well, interesting that you said it, because I think our sphere is the same way. You call them and then they're like, I don't have anybody, but you have to continue to nurture that relationship. And same with what you were talking about at the beginning of the call, you network, but every time you go to a network meeting doesn't mean they're always going to have a lead for you. I think so. It's interesting that we spend a lot of time on sphere, which we should, and networking, which we should, but door knocking doesn't change that process. You still have to nurture those leads in the future, right? So.
Yeah, and you're treating all of those. So really, all 3 of those are all to be treated the same way. So they're not going to generate a lead for you right then and there. And some people also say, "Oh, my brother's a real estate agent or whatever," and I just always say to them, "Okay, I understand that." Right. Well, and I always say to them, "Okay, I understand that lots of people know real estate agents. I'm just asking to be one of the ones you recommend." So, and I said, no one's going to just go to Home Depot and buy one refrigerator. They're going to shop around, and I'm asking that you do the same with me, that I just be one of the agents that you recommend. And that's how I get around so-and-so's a relative of mine as an agent.
Right. Good. So last part I want to go over before we open up to maybe questions that people are on the phone with is just a little bit more on just general about your business and a little bit on mindset. So you're a realtor since 2007, renewed your license a year and a half ago, kind of plunged right in and decided to do this full-time sales gig. What do you think has been the easiest part for you in real estate, and what do you think is the most been challenging part so far, kind of now being a full-time realtor a year and a half in?
The easiest part that I thought is my confidence was very low for selling, and I thought, I don't know what I'm doing. I have, I don't know if I can do this. So getting over that confidence and things, and now I know, oh wow, I kind of do know what I'm doing, and I can do this. That was my biggest problem, is my own head.
Okay.
So getting over that part was it, and that's too why I always stayed in the background. It's because I never had the confidence that I thought to sell real estate. Even though my dad's a broker and my husband does this, I still didn't have that confidence that I can do this, that I'm smart.
So how did you overcome that? I mean, obviously you're raised in a family with real estate agents. Your husband's a real estate coach. So how do you, if you have that low confidence, how have you had to work? How do you work through that? How is that built up in a year and a half time? You knew that you had that situation. What are some things that you've done to build that up?
Knowing that I'm going to be uncomfortable and that I just need to push through it. And
oh man, that was the best part. Can you say that again? We can't hear anything that was said. It was going to be good. Okay. Oprah moment. We didn't hear anything.
Knowing that I was just going to be uncomfortable and I had to push through it to make it comfortable. I know that this is uncomfortable for me, and I'm still fighting that all the time, that this is uncomfortable. This is not the normal thing for me. So I just need to push through it. So I know that's what I have to do, because I want to make this my career. This is what I want to do. Going to those networking things and door knocking, they still scare me. Talking to strangers scares the hell out of me, but I just know I need to push through it, and I'll be fine. And I will not die, and I will get through it.
I think that's really cool, because I think, like I said at the beginning, you could have just said, I don't want to do this door knocking thing, because you quote, don't need to, or don't feel that you need those leads. And yet I think you're doing it because you're really building your confidence out more than anything. Of course, gaining leads is obviously the purpose. So I thought that was cool. So what do you think has been the most, in the last 3 months, when you just were getting started, a year and a half, let me rephrase it. So And what is there anything you would do differently the first 3 months in real estate? Because you've been kind of in selling now for a year and a half. Would you do it the same way the second time around if you did it, or because there's a lot of people that are new, week into real estate or 6 months into real estate, whatever it is. Is there anything that you said, oh, I wish I did this differently?
Well, when I went back into selling, I went to work for my dad's brokerage company.
Okay.
Because I was very familiar with auctions. I'm a very comfortable having a conversation about auction properties and all that is around that. So I just wish that, and then once I was in that auction environment with him, I was more comfortable with selling the traditional aspect. So then I realized, oh wow, even though I know a lot about auctions, I found myself gravitating more towards residential and traditional sales. So then once I was doing that, it didn't make sense for me to stay at the company I was in. And that's why I moved over to KW, because I was leaning more towards residential sales, and the split that I had at the other company, it just didn't make sense. So that's why, and trying to.
So would you do that differently, or you're happy the way that would you have done that the same way, knowing what you know, or?
Yeah, I would have, because I still always thought, I was an auction person. I have that in mind that's what I was going to sell. But then I didn't know I was going to like residential sales and traditional methods so much. So if I didn't have that, I'd still wonder, oh, should I go work for my dad? Should I do that? And I just got that out and said, no, I shouldn't do that anymore.
Gotcha. Well, I had just 2 questions, and then I'll open it up for other people to ask if they have anything. Is one of the things you said earlier in like the door knocking part and prep was you time block and you really focus on kind of getting everything set up so when you're doing your door knocking, you can be ready to go. Like, how do you manage your time professionally and personally? Like, how does that work for you? Because I think that maybe we have somebody that wants to door knock, and yet every time we decide to door knock, life gets in the way and we don't have time to door knock. Or maybe you want to do networking and they just don't run out of time to network. How do you make it a priority in your day and your life? Because you got a lot going on and everybody else does too, of course. But how do you have to time block to door knock. So is there any specific things you do to focus on your time management, or any tools or apps or websites you use to kind of keep yourself focused on your time?
Every Monday morning, I sit down and I time block my week. So I go through, I time block my week. I leave. I know when I'm going to lead gen, what power hours I'm going to attend. Okay, if I'm doing an open house that Sunday, I prep which open house I'm going to do. I prep, okay, if I'm calling, these are what I'm going to call on. So I kind of do all that Monday morning. So my whole game plan is set up for the week. And then I just simply use a Google Calendar to do that. And I leave holes in there for if a buyer calls and needs to see a house, things like that. Then I know, okay, I can go do that this evening and whatever evening I'm available. So I'm not spending 5 nights a week out showing buyers various things. I don't let the buyers control my life either. So if I'm not available to see something that evening, then I'll tell them, hey, I can't go show you this evening, but I can show you this other evening. So
when you're building up a business, do you fear that like you saying no is a problem because they're going to like not use you?
It depends too. Like it depends on the neighborhood and price range that they're looking at. If they're looking at in a price range that I know we have to get into this house right away, then I might move around some things. But other than that, if it's not, then no, I don't. They shouldn't expect me to be at their beck and call. So, and I set them up to know that, I mean, they're not my only client, and they have that expectation that I'm not going to be a 24-hour agent. I'm not only working just for you. And they appreciate that. I mean, they work as well. So it's just having that conversation up front with them about that.
Gotcha. And the last thing is mindset. I focus on mindset a lot, and I know as a family, we talk about it a lot. Like, what do you do to keep positive and keep like in a growth mindset? Because it's easy to say that you're building your confidence. It's easy to, to say that, oh, door knocking, you'll kind of get over it. But there are going to be days where your mindset's going, yeah, it's raining. Let's not do it door knocking. Yeah, those big dogs are scary. You're like, how do you work on your mindset to keep positive and to keep doing the activities? Because what I always say, 90% is mindset, 10% skill. So how do you stay in the mindset to keep pushing, keep getting, you like you said, keeping being uncomfortable. What advice would you give for somebody on if they're struggling with that?
Having someone that will kind of help you be accountable. So you are my husband, and you and I talk about it all the time. And I know that if I've time blocked and I said, this is what I'm going to go do. And if I said, okay, I'm going to go door knock at 3:30, and I talk to you and you're like, oh, how did door knocking go? And I didn't door knock, I would feel like I'm disappointing you. So that's why I always feel like, okay, I just need to, if I say this, I'm going to do this, what I time block, I'm going to do it. And then I know I'm uncomfortable with it. And my daughter and I have this pact. She started a new school, and I'm asking her to do things that are uncomfortable. So we kind of talk every day about what did you do that was uncomfortable today. And it's interesting to see what she's doing that's uncomfortable, that she's now becoming comfortable. And then she asked me, so I just have to keep expanding what I'm doing and not let that scariness block it, because that's my biggest problem, is that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a lot of us. I think we all have fallen in that same bucket. So awesome. Well, I know, Kim, you're headed to the hospital to be with your dad, and he's going through some stuff. So, but if anybody had any questions, do you have time for a couple questions if somebody asked real quick?
Yes.
Anybody have any specifics on door knocking or real estate in general from their perspective of what she's been sharing with us? Anybody want to pipe in? Probably say your name because she probably doesn't recognize your voice. Anybody want to have any questions?
This is Charlie Thomas.
Hey, Charlie.
My question, Kim, is have you ever done door knocking not for an open house, just door knock to meet new people? And if you did, what did you use or what did you say?
I have not done that. I've contemplated doing that for whenever my team gets a new listing. And I'm probably going to start that if I don't have an open house that weekend. So I try and do 2 open houses a month. So I think what I'm going to try and incorporate is if we get a new listing in a neighborhood that I think would be good, I'm circle prospecting with phone calls and then following up that Friday with door knocking. So I think I'm going to start to incorporate that, but I just haven't done that yet.
I like it. We have it on a recording, so this is beautiful.
Right.
Good accountability.
So don't tell Tracy.
Yeah.
She'll make me do it.
All right. Anybody else have any questions or any other experiences that they've gone through with door knocking that they kind of want to share before we hang up?
Hi, this is Kevin Perrier. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Oh, yeah. This is Kevin, long-time listener, first-time caller, and but I wanted to say to Kimberly, thank you, because this is one of the cold calling, door knocking is one of those things that I just was trying to just push it away, but a strategy of that, I have a listing coming up, and of doing that in conjunction with open houses, listings, and that such thing. It kind of eases into it, and really, I was confused as to how long do I do it? How many doors do I knock on it? If I just start out, like you say, doing every other house, cars at home, and doing maybe 15 to 20, it can kind of ease into it. So I like the example that you gave, and I think it's going to enable me to kind of break into it a little bit more easy than I had anticipated. So I want to say thank you.
Yeah. Even if you
Oh, go ahead. Go, Kim. Sorry. I'll block this person.
Oh, I mean, even if you're more comfortable doing like 10, then do 10. That's better than 0. So I do 20 just based on the neighborhood, and I was comfortable doing 20. So cool. And then don't waste your time if you don't see cars in the driveway, because they're never gonna. Some people don't even check their front door, so it's not even worth doing that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's powerful that you don't need to door knock 100 doors and you don't have to be out for 6 hours, So right. I think everything starts gradually and then suddenly. We talk about that a lot. I think that's great. You do 20. I always did 20 to the left and 20 to the right. So I always did 40. But you got to start somewhere. Then, like you said, 5 or 10, 20, whatever it ends up being. So,
cool. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Hey, Kim, this is Jerry.
Hey, Jerry.
Hey, Kim.
Yeah, she's there.
Hi.
Go for it.
Hey, just wanted to second what Kevin said, that it was really helpful. All the tips and starting out with 20 instead of just kind of tackling everybody.
Have you done any
I'm
door
also
knocking at all?
terrified.
What about you?
No, I have not done door knocking. No, I've been putting off door knocking because I'm terrified of it. But I have an open house on Sunday, so I've been doing the circle prospecting, and her tips have kind of helped me feel like I can maybe start doing, 15 to 20 this probably tomorrow. But yeah,
So
no,
you
I
are
appreciate
going to
all
do
her
them
tips. It was
tomorrow?
helpful.
I like it. I like it.
I am going to do it tomorrow.
Good. And maybe bring somebody with you. I think I thought that advice was good. I think it's really important that you kind of get somebody to push at the beginning. So that's good too. Good.
Yeah.
And like when I did it with Diane for the first time, I wish she was on the call, but the first time I did it with Diane, she had the flyer. So if her name was on the flyer, which is fine. But what I did is I just went around and had my business card as well and just said, hey, an agent of mine is doing an open house up here. And so I didn't reinvent the wheel. I didn't redo a whole nother flyer. I was just there in support. And then I just did the one side and she did the other, and we just got through it, and we met back at the cars when we didn't have any more flyers. So you just got to get through it, and it's not scary. They won't, I don't know. Somebody might have died from door knocking, but I don't know.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? That was good though. I learned a lot. I took a ton of notes as well. Well, thank you guys for kind of joining us on this mastermind. Like I said, next week, we have a mastermind on Friday at 11, so the 25th of January at 11, and we'll be interviewing people talking about networking. Kim, thanks for taking an hour away. I know you're busy and you got stuff going on. We're praying for your dad, and we'll work through that. And so thanks for taking time out of your day. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. Bye, guys. And I'll take this recording and put it on our closed Facebook group so you guys can review it if you guys need to. All right. See you guys.
Thanks. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.